In 1985, I was 10, and like many kids of that time, I was into fantasy game books and tabletop RPG games. The heroic fantasy genre was very popular. It was all about dungeons and traps, monsters and magic, sword and shield, helm and armor. I roamed about book and game stores in search of epic adventures. And one day, I saw it. The box was standing right in front of me. I couldn't release my eyes from it. I was fascinated. The rest of the store had disappeared. It was a dramatic moment. The title read Talisman, and just by looking at the front and back cover illustrations, I knew beyond doubt that this was to become my longtime favorite game. And it did. Talisman, The Magical Quest is an adventure board game set in a medieval fantasy world for 2 to 6 players, originally designed by Games Workshop. First released in 1983, the game had 3 revisions and several official expansions. It sold 800,000 units by the year 2000 and has now reached over 1 million. It was translated into most of the European languages, so we can say that it was, and still is, a fairly popular one. I have both the English and French versions. Those are the second edition, which brought cosmetic changes over the first one. The black and white cards were colorized, and the game board was changed from a single folded unit to 4 interlocking pieces. This is how it looks when you put it together. The French version still has the single-piece board that you unfold like this. And I believe it's a better setup than the 4-piece one, because the board is smoother, without breaks, and remains more stable during the game. This version has a plastic case and offers several compartments to lodge the game cards, which are just mixed all together in the original cardboard one. As soon as you open it, you immediately notice the awesome graphical design by Gary Chalk. This really gives its soul to the game. I'm convinced that its initial success was largely due to this. Mr. Chalk is known for illustrating the Lone Wolf Gamebook series that was released at about the same time as Talisman. His outstanding style really suits the heroic fantasy genre. Just look at these characters, these items, these monsters, and the board itself. Really magnificent. The world is divided into 3 regions. Players wander in the outer region until they find a way to the middle one, acquire a talisman, then reach the innermost region and claim the Crown of Command. Players have 14 characters to choose from, some good, like the monk or the druid, some neutral, like the warrior or the dwarf, and some evil, like the ghoul or the wizard. Each of them has his own statistics and special abilities. For instance, the troll is the strongest and he always finds a path in swamps, whereas other characters will get lost there. Same for the elf in the woods. The thief can steal items he comes across with. The dwarf evades enemies in the hills and finds his way in mines. The minstrel has a unique ability with animals. Not only most of them won't attack him, but he can also charm them to become his followers. Each character has its own initial equipment, and some begin the game with magical spells. But of course, many other things can be found, bought, or conquered during the game, and players have many ways to improve their statistics. It's a very basic roleplay since there are only 3 characteristics, very much like in game books: strength, craft, and health points. These characteristics are put to test again and again as players fight enemies or try to force their way through obstacles. They can change during the game and are affected by many different factors: standard or magical items that the player finds, weapons, armor, and other gear, but also companions or other encounters, good or evil. These effects can be temporary or permanent. On some occasions, a player can be changed into a toad. He must then take a special toad card to replace his character, with minimal statistics until the enchantment is over and he reverts to his normal form. Talisman offers a rather simple gameplay, making the game easy to pick up with novices. On a player's turn, they throw a die for movement. Once on a new square, the player follows its specific instructions. In most cases, these require to draw a certain number of adventure cards, the game's backbone. These can be good or evil encounters, companions, weapons, treasure, magical items, but also new places and other things that either remain in this area or go back to the pile of cards after their action. If another player is in the same space, then the two characters may fight each other. If most fighting use strength, some creatures will attack with craft instead. A lost fight costs 1 life point, an item or a companion depending on the context. Craft also determines the spellcasting power of a character. There are many different spells including teleportation, invisibility, or destruction. During their quest, players will encounter evil as well as good creatures, and since they are themselves good or evil, these encounters will benefit them or not, depending on their own alignment. Players can meet companions that will follow them faithfully like the servant, or for a price like the mercenary. Companions like the unicorn can simply add points to the player's statistics, whereas others will do specific actions. The alchemist will turn items into gold. The gnome will guide you through difficult areas, and if you take the prince or the princess back to the castle, you'll be healed and rewarded. From the 3 regions that form the world of Talisman, the outer one is the largest and easiest. There are mostly fields, hills, and woods, with a few civilized areas like the village, city, church, or tavern where players can rest, buy items, and try their chance and gain, or lose, something. There are several ways to reach the middle region, either by fighting the sentinel, by finding the boatsman who ferries you over the river, by making a raft with an axe in the woods, or being teleported by some magic encounter. It's not really advised to leave the outer region without gaining strength and items first by roaming about hills and fields. Players will face more challenging adventures in the middle region, where there's more potential for encounters, as most areas now require players to draw more than one card. There are also dangerous places all by themselves, such as the chasm, the desert, and the Black Knight's dwelling. But the most important one is the Warlock's Cave, where you can be assigned a quest to gain a talisman, the essential item without which you can't win. Although there are a few other ways to acquire this coveted item, including finding one by chance, just like that, the Warlock's quests are the most obvious ones. Once players have a talisman and enough strength or craft to pass through the portal of power, they can enter the inner region. There they must face the most formidable guardians of all, such as the vampire, the werewolf, or the lizardman before crossing the Valley of Fire to the Crown of Command. Although the game was popular, it had often mixed reviews in the specialized press. Imagine magazine stated, "Obviously, this is a luck game, and the amount of luck required is sometimes very frustrating." However, the game plays efficiently and cleanly. If you like fantasy board games, then this is quite a good example. I tend to agree with this statement. Luck plays a major part in the game, yes, for sure. But in my opinion, its most attractive feature is subtler than just who ultimately wins. It's about creating a consistent magical environment where everything feels like it really belongs here and where players want to dive into, not necessarily to win, but just to play. And the work of Gary Chalk really helps to achieve this attractive effect. Talisman resembles a gamebook in many aspects. It gains from pictures what it loses from text, but the role-playing system is almost the same, and it's a good receipt, it just works. Each of its many cards is a joy to look at, and the board is so awesome that back then in the 1980s, it made me want to create my own, and I drew boards, monsters, and items, and we played those with friends. Just like Tolkien books that I read at about the same time made me write my own stories. Such is the way with great authors and masterpieces. They kindle a fire in you. You too. Keep the passion burning. Subscribe to The Age of Ink. You can also support the channel on Patreon if you want. And if you have specific wishes for future videos, please write in the comments. See you soon.